And if you follow the emergency lighting escape route in green, you will end up outside, and there is a rendezvous point at the front of the building. And if you have to go out the back, one in the backyard as well. If you wish to use the toilets, have a comfort break, the toilets are outside of the door here. If you turn to your right, and they're immediately on your left. And we will begin with public participation shortly. Connor, are we live? Thank you. So we have two people who wish to speak in public participation. If you'd like to come to the end of the table, you'll see a microphone in front of the Unity candle, and the first person is Claire Crumpton, Fisher's Hill Voluntary Garden Group. Claire, thank you.
Worship, Deputy Mayor, councillors, members of the gallery. Very, very short and sweet. I sent this very short movie to Property and Assets, but I felt it only right that the whole council could get to see it. So I'd just like you to see and enjoy, and I'd like to give you the heads up that I've got a planting and digging party on Friday the 3rd of February. Even if you can't dig for the hedge, to thicken the hedge, which we really want in soon, just turning up or giving me a shout and helping with refreshments, we very much appreciate it. It'd be good to see as many people as possible there. Thank you.
Thank you. Wow.
I do 11:30 every Friday, any time between 11:30 and 2:30.
Thank you, Claire. That was great. Probably the best use of 3 minutes in public participation we've had for quite a while. How lovely. So now we have Bon. Are you here? No, she hasn't turned up. So we were hoping that we might have Bunny Teverson from the farm project with the town deal. But as Bon isn't here, that was the two people we had on public participation. So we will now move towards opening the meeting formally. And we have very special guests here tonight, Julie Reader-Sullivan from Menor District Council. Julie, would you do us the honour of lighting the Unity candle? There is a lighting device next to the candle. And once the candle is lit, I would like to ask you to join me in standing to observe the silent minute at the start of the meeting. But Julie.
Would someone like to be ready to assist?
You're there, thank you.
Well done.
So thank you. If you'd like to join with me, and we'll observe the silent minute at the start of the meeting. Thank you. Thank you very much, everyone. Connor, do we have any apologies for tonight's meeting?
Worship, yes, I've received apologies from councillors Cottle, Henderson and Napper. Cottle and Henderson owing to personal commitments, and Councillor Napper is feeling unwell. I've also had apologies from County Councillor Hart, who also sadly is feeling unwell.
Thank you. Councillors, do we have any? Sorry, Councillor Manning.
I have an apology from Alderman Keary.
Thank you very much. So we now move to declarations of interest. Councillors, during tonight's meeting, if you have any interest within any of the items that you feel is worthy of note, even though they may be on your actual declarations of interest, please do say. I will say that I am a member of the Town Deal Board, as we will be discussing the Town Deal this evening, and I am also a director of Avalon Community Energy, which is part of the Town Deal, and I am a director of the Glastonbury Information Centre, CIC, which is also involved in Town Deal. Thank you. Yes, Councillor Mann.
I'm also on the Town Deal Board and also a director of Beckley Island Regeneration Trust.
Thank you.
I'm also on the Town Deal Board.
Thank you. Councillor Randu.
Friends of Bridesmount are one of the people who are receiving money from the Town Deal.
Thank you. Councillors, if you feel that you need to mention anything during the meeting, please do raise it as a point of order. We now move on to item 3, to approve and sign as a correct record the minutes of the meeting that was held here on the 13th of December. And I will go straight through to the minutes of the extraordinary meeting held on the 15th of December too. So we start with page 59. And page 60. Page 61. Yes.
To raise about the thing from the planning committee at the bottom there. 13 High Street has broken planning permission in the building of the little kind of houses that they built where the bank car park was. They are supposed to have had them so that the windows cannot open in these skylights. And that was on the planning consent, whatever they have. They have actually broken and the windows are not kind of shaded as they should be, and they can open. So I don't know what that means, but I just thought I ought to bring that up. But I know Mr. Shah, who owns that, is quite contemptuous of the planning committee.
Well, thank you for raising this. I think that if we note your point in the minute, and we will ask the clerk to the planning committee to forward that note in the minutes to the planning authority, which is Mendip, and we might direct it to the attention of somebody there, like perhaps Judy Reeler-Sullivan.
I can tell him who it is.
So, page 62. Yes, Councillor White.
Second paragraph from the bottom, page 62. Councillor Manning spoke about the Glastonbury Community Development Trust. So mid-sentence, it's mid-paragraph, it says, organisation currently dormant but still incurring contracted costs and hoping to re-establish themselves. I presume that should be in the next financial year.
Thank you. I look to the clerk, who's busy noting that. Thank you, Councillor. So page 63. '64. '65. '66. '67. And page 68. And councillors, we will go straight through to the extraordinary meeting of 14 December.
Yes, Your Worship, I made a keystroke error on the agenda. It was held on the 14th of December. It's correct on the minutes, it's wrong on your agenda.
Thank you. So, 69. And page 70. Councillors, with the amendments that have been raised, are you happy for me to sign these two sets of minutes as a true representation of the meetings that they belong to? I will suffice. Thank you. Whilst I do so, if we receive an update on the actions from the last meeting, I will ask you, Conor, if you could speak to this, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. So, actions that were noted from the last meeting, the feedback on Remembrance Weekend has been shared with the Projects and Events Officer, and the officer, myself, and yourself, Your Worship, are due to meet with the Vicar, David McGeoch, to go over that and make any changes for next year. So are the Arts, Culture and Events Advisory Committee, whose first meeting is on the 24th of January. I passed on the recommendations of the police regarding planting at the War Memorial to Glastonbury and Bloom. They are due to meet in February and it's on their agenda. I'm due to write to the Unitary Authority regarding business rates. I haven't yet done that, but they come into being in April, but I will certainly write to the senior officers before then. I gave feedback to the team internally regarding abbreviations that was raised at the last meeting. I believe the phone kiosk consultation is being undertaken by the admin officers with input very kindly from Councillor Manning.
Great.
The thermal imaging camera has been received, and I believe at some point in the agenda, Councillor Ronnie Dougal might wish to take you over its progress, but I understand it's been round to a number of properties already, and we're due to use it here at the Town Hall when we're able to. The warm space has started this evening down in the small hall and is being advertised, and it is Tuesdays between 10 a.m. and 12 p.m. and 7 p.m. and 9 p.m. and Thursdays between 7 p.m. and 9 p.m. all the way up until the beginning of March. I revised the terms of reference that was raised. I'm in the process of clarifying the Section 106 money for the improvements to the play areas, but I have not yet had a response on that one. And that's the actions from the last meeting, Your Worship.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions for the clerk relating to these actions? Yes.
Thank you. Just observation. They started in Abbey Park.
Yes, thank you. It was the section clarifying the Section 106 for the other play areas that Mendip District Council wanted to update. We just wanted to make sure that that money wasn't being spent twice.
Thank you very much. So, councillors, we now move on to note the neighbourhood beach team update and latest crime statistics. We, of course, have had quite fortunate interaction with members of the Constabulary and the Police and Crime Commissioner over the last month or so. But you will find tabled the statistics for Glastonbury Town.
They were circulated with the summons, Your Worship, and I've got them up on the board.
Thank you. So, Conor, is there anything you wish to speak to in relation to these?
No, thank you, Your Worship, other than I continue to work with the Inspector on the Town Centre Crime Working Group.
Thank you. Yes, Councillor.
I'm slightly puzzled that there's only been one drug crime in the whole of Glastonbury. And that seems to me somewhat low. And I just wonder what exactly they do to find people who break the law around drugs. Do they use sniffer dogs, or what do they actually do? Because I could find more than one. I could find a lot more than one. Just asking for a friend.
Well, I would note your question. I'm sure we're all interested in understanding how these statistics arise. But unfortunately, as there is not a member of the Constabulary here, I don't know if we can answer the question. It may be that things are changing in Glastonbury. We just don't know, do we? Yes, Councillor.
Yes, so I know that there's nobody here to answer this, but I would very much like to know the difference where they say violence and sexual offences, which is the highest, and I believe the Commissioner said that it was one of the highest sort of in the land, but if that's separated at all, what violence and sexual offences have been put together. So it'd just be interesting to know what, what the difference in between that, if they could be separated.
Thank you. Yes, Councillor Cook.
Thank you. Yeah, if I could just answer that. He didn't actually say sexual violence, he said domestic violence was the predominant problem. So that's not mentioned.
So sexual offences.
So, councillors, do we wish to put some of these questions back to the Constabulary? So, Conor, have you made a note of the questions that were raised?
I have, Your Worship.
Perhaps we can contact Simon and team and ask the questions, and hopefully we'll have some feedback for the next meeting. When are you due to meet with the police again?
I haven't got a date organised, Your Worship, but it will be this month.
Thank you. Maybe you might be able to just raise that too. Thank you very much. Councillors, we will take as noted the neighbourhood beat team update. So item 6, to receive and update Mendip District Council regarding the enabling project as part of the town deal, and consider issuing a letter of support for this project. I'm very pleased to welcome Julie Reader-Sullivan to our meeting tonight. Julie, if you'd like to speak to this, please use the microphone at the end of the table.
Working, yes. Thank you, Your Worship. Thank you all. So, I do have I think we have the letter of support, the letter that we've written to yourselves requesting support. This is, as you all know, this as on behalf of Mendip District Council, as the accountable body for the Glastonbury Town deal and as the senior responsible officer for the Glastonbury Town deal. From the beginning of the consultation process regarding the town investment plan, the key theme was to provide safe spaces for vulnerable people living in Glastonbury in insecure accommodation. There's been a lot of work done in order to find a site, a lot of support through lots of agencies. The challenges, as you'll be aware, in terms of land availability in Glastonbury, and also the site had to be within the town deal boundary, gave us lots of challenges. A site has been identified, and we do have a site location map for that site now, and it is in council ownership. This is in advance of the full planning application, so there will be a full planning application to follow. This is in advance of that, and the funding for this will be a mix of the Glastonbury Town Deal funding, Homes England funding, and some Mendip District Council funding in order to support this project, which makes it actually one of the smaller projects within the Glastonbury Town Deal in terms of the funding for that. But the funding is a mixed funding allocation. This is for a proposal for approximately 35 pictures. That will depend on the final layout as put forward in the planning application. It will be a mix of transit and permanent pictures, and there has been consultation with a number of stakeholder groups in Glastonbury regarding what would be appropriate in terms of layout, etc. There will be further consultation, of course, because we're not at a planning application yet. We're making progress towards that. And as you can see, the site is on Porchester Drove. Really looking for a letter of support from Glastonbury Town Council, as this is something that we've been working towards for a considerable amount of time. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
The location of the, say, Snow's timber yard or something.
So, councillors, please observe the Oxford rules and stand when speaking. Councillor Smythe.
Would you be so kind to identify the landmark there so we can all kind of...
Okay, if you look opposite, you'll see the timber store with the dotted line on the other side of Porchester Drove, and that will help you align where that site now is.
Thank you. Yes, Councillor Owen Dougal.
Hello, Judy. Thank you very much. Very short, succinct, to the point presentation. Am I correct that this is the Somerset County Council land?
It's now in the ownership for this. Yes.
Yes. So it was Somerset County Council.
Yeah.
Okay. I know exactly what field it is. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Lockerband.
I'm really happy to hear some land's been found. I understand the size of the land is about 9 acres, is that right?
Yes.
And then you mentioned it would provide 35 pitches or so. And I imagine you'd fit a lot more on. You've come to a figure. I'm curious why you've come to the figure of 35.
Okay, there's a number of reasons for that, including some of the area is in a flood risk zone, which means that development on that site wouldn't be appropriate. It's also about providing growing space for people who are living there, so that they'll have an area on which to grow vegetables or whatever is appropriate, and to provide space around the site so that the layout is appropriate.
Thank you. Any other questions? Yes, Councillor White.
Yeah, a point of clarity, really. I looked through the various information that we'd had from you and Town Deal Board and so on. So, which council owns that field?
Right. At the moment, because of course we're moving to unitary, it is owned by Somerset Council. It is licensed now to Mendip District Council. That was an agreement made last year in advance of being able to get to this stage, and it will be owned, of course, by the unitary council as of the 1st of April.
Okay, because I'd sort of understood that the town council was going to be responsible for it. No?
That's never the case.
Okay.
Thank you very much. Yes, Councillor.
Thank you. Hello. Amenities. What kind of amenities? So rubbish, water, that kind of thing. Would it be plumbed in? Just curious, really. Thank you. At this stage, of course, we're in advance of the planning application, but yes, it will have services available, and as much will be done to be as environmentally friendly as possible, but clearly things like power and water, etc., will be provided. We're hoping that there will be solar, depending on some of the other projects, and otherwise I'm going to start to talk about all the links between the projects. But the whole idea is to map all the projects together and ensure that there will also be footpaths that link all the projects around the Beckery area.
So I think we've got Councillor Price, then Councillor Manning, and we'll then follow on after that. But Councillor Price first.
That's really good news to hear that that's finally happening. I'm just wondering how people can get involved in that consultation that haven't already been involved.
If people wish to get involved that haven't already been involved, they can obviously contact us via the Glastonbury Town Deal website. There will also be further consultation once obviously the planning application is issued, because then there will be the formal consultation process.
Paul?
I can, depending on when planning permission is granted. We would hope that we would be starting work certainly this year, and therefore in the project plan we would be hoping for people to be able to occupy the site as from, I think initially we said April next year. Clearly that may change depending on how the site develops, but the plan is obviously to develop as quickly as we can in order to make progress on that one.
Thank you. Yes, Councillor Lilith?
I just wanted to confirm, people dwelling on the new site, they will be paying council tax and market rent.
They will be paying what they need to pay in terms of, there will be a rent, it will be agreed, it will be in line with the housing policies, etc., etc.
And council tax.
I'm not sure on the deal regarding that for the site, but yes, they will pay whatever they need to pay, whatever is their obligation.
It's not being subsidised by...
It's not being subsidised.
Yes, Councillor.
Well, one brief one. Is there any thought, especially I'm thinking about the transit pictures for horse-drawn?
There would be that would be facilitated within the layout for the transit pictures, because they actually provide more space than the permanent ones in some ways, because of having to have a wider turning space.
Thank you. No, we've had a few people ask, so yeah, thank you.
Are there any other questions? Sorry, Councillor Price again.
I don't know if I'm going too far forward, but I'm just wondering about what the process will be for people applying and potentially being chosen.
Yeah, there will be an allocations policy, which will be disclosed, and that will of course require that people can evidence links to Glastonbury as the housing policy does it.
Thank you. I wonder, is now that you've presented this to the town council, is this going to be made? I mean, we're on YouTube, but this is now in the public domain. Yes. And is Mendip issuing a statement at some point?
We have a statement prepared, and that will be issued certainly when the planning application is issued, if not before. This is really. This is now in the public domain. We're asking for support, and yes, a press statement is prepared.
Thank you. And do you have a sort of template idea of what the letter of support might be like, or is that something that's down to us as the council?
It is down to yourselves, the council. I provide
Just inquiring. Yes, Councillor.
So you say that there's room for 35 pitches and place for them to grow land, which is wonderful, because that's what we always wanted. But I'm aware that we've got over 100 different vehicles around town at the moment. This will deal with 1/3 of them. What will happen?
There are other projects that are not at this advanced stage, not part of the town deal.
Thank you. So, councillors, we're being asked by Mendip and the town deal for a letter of support for the enabling project. We've heard that there will be 35 pitches, a mixture of permanent and temporary, and that this project will include other things such as a growing area for food and things like that. And I must say I'm very pleased that we now know the location, and also that it is able to deal with certainly a good amount of people, if not everybody that perhaps would like somewhere to live. So, councillors, would anybody wish to speak to this? Yes, councillor. Oh, sorry, councillor Cook.
Yeah, sorry, I was just going to ask, if possible, you're going to have horses, they're going to want to grow food, etc., etc. Is there any likelihood that they could, you could take any more land from there? I mean, that triangle looks ideal, and
because of
next to it.
the flood area, and that's as much as we could do within this allocation at the moment.
Yeah, but something could be done.
Something, there are, of course, possibilities moving forwards. There's also a lot of research around, if you like, how that if you make larger areas, it tends to get more complex, and it's better to have smaller sites at different locations.
At least it's being planned, though.
Yeah.
If it's planned, it's going to be a lot better than this random disorganisation.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you for that.
So, councillor White, I think you wish to speak.
Thank you. No, I was just going to say I would propose that we write a letter of support for it.
Thank you.
I'm happy to second that proposal.
Thank you. I see that you can. Yes, councillor, you wish to speak.
Given the flood possibilities, has any consideration been given to stilt dwellings?
Not for this, because of the nature of both the permanent and the transit. You would have to allow people to bring their vehicles and dwellings as they wish to. But that's why we're using the parts of the site that we are. Of course, if you look to the future, this is all we can do within the allocation of funds that we have. If you look to the future, there could be some other possibilities that could be reviewed.
Thank you,
but equally, it's making the site a nice, a comfortable place to live. It's not about trying to put lots in that then creates a space that we wouldn't want to, we wouldn't be proud of. And I think that's really important.
Thank you, councillor Smythe.
And to repeat what councillor White suggested, that we have a letter of support.
Thank you very much. My question before we move to vote is, you obviously have plans around how the site's managed. Mendip will be disappearing. Will it be managed by the county council?
Excuse me. It will be managed through the new council, but on contract to a specialist organisation. So it will not be managed directly by a council officer, for want of a better description. It will be managed by an expert organisation. We've already had discussions with a number, not in terms of depth or anything like that, but in terms of, is this something that they would be able to do, so that you do have that on-site presence and support.
Thank you very much. Sorry, yes, so I have two councillors. Yes, councillor Smythe.
Beg your pardon. A further question, continuing on from what you just said. I think it's very important that the specialist organisation has local knowledge, and therefore I think this council would be happy to offer any support, any liaison with that specialist organisation to provide that. I'm sure that councillors around the table would be very happy to work with them.
Thank you. Councillor Manning.
Yes, I agree that we should support this. I do wonder though, whether we can see the applications on TV, whether that is
the opportunity that we present to you this evening is to support this at the beginning of the process, and then obviously you can still comment on the planning application, but we really would like your support for this, given the fact that this is something we've all been trying to work towards for a long time.
So, councillors, we have a motion proposed that we do write a letter of support for the enabling project. I move to vote. All those in favour, please.
I have that as unanimous, Your Worship.
Thank you very much, and thank you so much for letting us know all about it.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. So, councillors, we now move on to item 7, to receive the budget monitoring report for January. We're 3/4 of the way, more or less, through the year. And we have a set of notes from Responsible Finance Officer, 19 notes with the information. Very happy to hear councillors' thoughts on any item within the report. Councillor Cook.
We are on the budget monitoring now.
Budget monitoring.
Yes. Sorry, I've got quite a few questions actually, if that's all right.
Absolutely.
Okay. Herbie's field donations on page 1, halfway down, £1,000. Is that from the parking for Carnival? Because that was advertised at £5 per car, and there were 300 cars there.
I don't believe it is. Connor, would you wish to speak to this?
Thank you, Your Worship. No, that £1,000, Councillor Cook, is the donation from Tour Fair for use of the field.
Right. Okay, so that will come in. Carnival come in somewhere else. Yeah. Okay. All right. Town hall lettings is still a bit low. The Christmas trees it's staggering. £1,058 actual income from Christmas trees. This used to be when I was on Chamber of Commerce. It was 95 shops we were doing at about £60 a tree. This amounts to about 20 shops, 18 to 20 shops. Is that all?
No, it was we ordered 45 trees, Councillor Cook. We use a number of them, so I estimate it's probably about 35 shops. And the price was set for £60, including VAT a tree, this year, by full council, I believe.
Gone down dramatically. Now, the other thing, I'm used to, in business and work, profit and loss accounts, and so that we can get percentages of, for instance, whatever the telecoms are adding up to, etc. So you can, look at your gross profits and check that everything's all in order. Now, the major concerns have always been rent, as a percentage. And there are margins, there are limits, and good and high and low, and similarly wages. So I've also joined the National Association of Local Councils and read up on their guidelines for payments, etc., and the whole process. And of course, whereas Lilith asked you the question about wages, you wrote back, not sort of wanting to name salaries and all the rest of it, which is quite right. We don't, we're not interested in that particularly, unless of course everybody is over 50,000 salary. That'd be nice. But what we are interested, what I'm finding very difficult to get hold of from these entire pages is the actual amount we're paying, the town council and the ratepayers are effectively paying for wages, including superannuation, including training, including clothing, including everything. I don't understand why it's put into sort of, I think I've got 7 different blocks here, which makes it very confusing, and I can't get a figure, so consequently I can't work out anything of any substance. But also considering the amount of people which sounds like we're going to be employing, you know, either this year or next year, or the following years indeed, apart from the existing ones we've got. I don't know if it's worrying anybody else, but I just see it escalating. And compounded by the fact that I was looking up and I came across Columpton, for instance, who is a town of 8,400. They're currently advertising, as most councils do, you know, this time of year, I guess, for especially clerks and, you know, assistant clerks and all the rest of it, and maintenance operators and everybody else, admins and so on and so forth. Columpton advertises that they have four maintenance contractors, a town clerk, assistant town clerk, an RFO, an admin assistant, and that's all right, and a caretaker. And they're looking for, you know, salaried, you know, and they quote the salaries of between 31 and 34 for a deputy TC. And you think, why can't we be as specific as that? Instead of having to trawl through quite a lot of different entries, whereas we could have one entry for employment and cost of all the equipment that's needed to equip them and to carry out their work. I just, is that possible, or is...
Well, Councillor, I think it's a very good point you're raising, and I think what we might do is ask for the responsible finance officer to answer your question relating to staff salaries and the other costs that are incurred through employment of staff. And it sounds, if I've got this correct, that you would like to have an overall figure of the amount of money that we're paying out for staff, full stop, as it were. We've got all the figures in there. Are you also asking for a breakdown of the number of staff within certain pay scales and things like that, so that you've got some sort of way of understanding how the overall figure?
I think that would actually be even probably fairer to do it that way. I mean, as I said, as you know, Lilith was pointing out, but I'm also pointing out, is that we're not interested in what people are earning. I mean, that's, you know, it's not necessarily a private matter, but at the same time, you know, I don't think that's necessary. It's the total amount that we're getting to each year, which seems to me to have been escalating quite considerably over the last, well, certainly 10 years that I remember. And yeah, yes, bracketing is a good idea. I think bracketing is probably the better idea. Then it's pretty anonymous, isn't it? Because as I say, I mean, from the NALC's point of view, it's everybody has the right, when people are turning over 50,000 a year, that it becomes a public kind of interest.
Oh,
150,000.
Yes, I understand. I think we would all wish to work for this council in that respect.
Yes, it would give more transparency. Is the buzzword for that, I suppose. But it's also a very clear way of identifying our needs from year to year.
I think this is a very good question. I think that we could ask the clerk to take it to the responsible finance officer. I would imagine that this would need to be, if it comes to council, a part of the meeting where we would need to exclude the public, so that we don't risk in being indiscreet about people's right, salaries and things, but that we could look at it as a council. Absolutely, yeah.
Okay, thank you very much. Yeah.
Connor, did you wish to ask any questions related to this?
I didn't want to ask a question, Your Worship. I wanted to be able to show you all. So actually, this was raised before the budgeting process started in about, I think it was raised in September. So I actually went through all the figures. Yes, we don't currently present them like this throughout the entire budget. So the budget monitoring report you have doesn't show it like this. But I lifted out all the numbers and have provided this summary repeatedly for you all when considering the budget. So in 2021-22, the total was 306,181 across the entire team. The estimate for this year was going to be £376,434. So that increased quite significantly because we pay according to the Green Book conditions. So every year there is a nationally agreed pay increase, and also I believe for 22-23 the transitional town clerk role, which is what I was initially employed into, was factored in to the budget, so that's why it jumped that much that year. The actual we are likely to spend is forecasted to be £363,673, which is a slight underspend. So the previous town clerk retired 11 months earlier than was forecasted, and what happened was everyone's roles throughout the whole organisation, but their roles and responsibilities were considered, and some of that money was used essentially to recognise what other members of staff would pick up, being one member of staff down, and also that includes the annual pay increase nationally agreed for this year, which was quite a high percentage, more than was budgeted for because of the cost of living crisis. But as I say, that was a nationally agreed figure. The forecast for next year goes up to £398,498. We're not planning to employ any additional members of staff next year, to my knowledge. That is taking into account all the staff we have at the moment. We employ 10.1 full-time equivalents across 12 individuals. And that only takes into account the nationally agreed pay increase, which we're forecasting to be up to 7%. So we've got flexibility in the budget, because this year it was a fixed amount, but for lower pay grades it was 10%, and then it worked its way down for higher pay grades to about 5%. So we're forecasting next year, just to be safe, a 7% increase, but then that obviously has impacts on the forecasts for national insurance and pension. So although that is the forecast for next year, I don't actually think we'll spend that much, but that's how much we're proposing you put in the budget so that we don't find ourselves short. So I've provided this quite a number of times, which gives you the single view I believe, Councillor Cook, you're asking for. And yes, I've already worked with a responsible finance officer that from next financial year, the year after next, 24-25, we're moving accounting packages and we'll set out the accounts in an easier way to understand, because I had exactly the same problem that you all have, but that's it aggregated. I believe that's what you wanted, Councillor Cook.
Councillor Cook.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Connor. The burial board reimbursement, has that been taken off?
Yes, so the way that, basically it's not on here, but there would be a subtotal under all the expenditure, and then it takes away the income. So these figures at the bottom are
They're the net figures.
So they're expenditure minus the income.
So, Councillor, I think Connor has remarkably anticipated this within the meeting tonight. I'm very impressed by the summary, Connor, and would say that these sorts of presentations of like a departmentalized review, as it were, is very beneficial, I'm sure, to every councillor, and perhaps we should think about having a way of reviewing our budgets in this way more regularly, perhaps. I don't know whether councillors would agree to that. So, yes.
So I just wanted to say that I actually did, as Rick said, I asked Connor some of these questions in a private email, and he also gave me some other very useful information which I think would be handy to put if we're going to have this to all councillors, which was the a kind of comparison with similar sized authorities, because I think that's actually important to know as well, because there are comparables that we can use, and it gives us a good kind of benchmark.
Yes, you're quite right. And I also imagine that we also need to think about what part of our commercial income is paying for what part of our operations as well. And so, because although there are many parishes of a similar size to us, they are not necessarily have the same income streams that we do, and they don't necessarily they might not be as progressive as Glastonbury is in their outlook. So there's plenty to consider in this. Absolutely, I'm very pleased to see a breakdown like this myself. So thank you very much for raising the question. So, Councillor Cook.
Just one more question to Connor. With my glasses are rubbish, the ones I bought, 200 quid and then lost. So I still can't see them. Will that include, can you include in it things like training, equipment, and all of that kind of stuff, books, whatever. Zoom, Zoom could go on it, couldn't it, if it ever comes back again. Anything like that that involves staff, rather than just, I can see most of those, but all of that could go on as well, especially clothes and,
yeah, absolutely.
Go on, that'd be brilliant.
Just on the training point, the reason that training's not in there is because we don't split our training budget between councillors and staff. The budget line is councillor and staff training, so that's something I'm also going to ask to be for next year. But yes, that was just as we account at the moment. I just split out so that when you've been considering, well, when the council have been considering this since September, it was clearer. Because yes, it was split across several different bits of the budget, and you'd have to manually add it up. So I've split it all out.
Okay.
Thank you. A very good question, and I think it's very useful for us all to see this. Thank you so much. But I did see other councillors had their hands raised. Councillor Ronnie Dougal?
Yes, so I'm going right to the very bottom, and it's our 19 net income, of which we have a positive in the actual. The budget was a negative, and so the variance is 9,000. Is that saying that we've actually made a positive in our net income for this year, because we budgeted to have a loss for this year? Yeah, am I correct in understanding that? I'm slightly confused as the actual is positive 4,000, the budget is negative 5,000. Does that mean that we've made a positive gain of 40,000, or do you see what I'm saying? Whereas we budgeted to make a loss, is that correct? You can understand my confusion because I can see you're having to look at it really carefully as well.
Don't forget you've got a page 2.
What I'll do, Councillor Ronnie Dougal, I'll take that back to the responsible finance officer and I'll ask her to email you a reply, because as I don't do the day-to-day administration with the finances, although I can understand it when we look at the budget, the big picture, I haven't taken the time to consider that, and rather than me standing here and trying to work it out, I'll get Jane to email you.
Thank you very much.
If for future meetings anyone has any queries, I do normally put it on the summons. If you can get me a query, even if it's during the working day on a council day, I can get Jane to answer it, because there will be some things I can't answer. But I'll take your query to Jane and ask her to email you.
Thank you very much.
Councillor, just a thought on this. You will note that the full precept has now been paid to us. So we may be in that fortunate position that we've got all of the funds in, but we haven't paid all the money out yet.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, Councillor Lochbandu?
I just wanted to report briefly that Councillor Manning and I met Jane, the Responsible Finance Officer, last week, because we'd previously taken on the responsibility to do spot checks with her, which we did. But we also took the opportunity to talk through how best to present the accounts with her. And one thing we were talking about, as well as the spot checking, was providing miniature reports on profit centres or cost centres for different bits of our operation, which we slightly ran out of time, but she's very willing to do that in principle. And we're going to work towards identifying which bits would be most useful to have specific reports on, which could include employees, and then how to do that, how to pick that out of the accounts.
Thank you very much. Any other observations or points that you wish to raise? I would just like to say how lovely it is to see that the Frost Fair actually generated more income than we budgeted. And that's full marks to the Frost Fair team, and indeed Jane and Sarah Marks and Connor and all of our team did tremendously well on that day, and all of the volunteers too. So how wonderful. Thank you, Connor. Could we have a vote of thanks to the members of our staff who gave up their time to make sure the Frost Fair was a tremendous success on the day? Councillors, I will suffice.
Aye.
Thank you. Councillors, if there are no more points to be raised, we will consider and note that monitoring report and move on to item 8, which is the schedule of payments. Please do raise any questions you have around the payments that are going out at the moment. Yes, Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Your Worship. I might have missed it, but right at the end, the bottom one, Robert Macbeth, vegetables for the community lunch. Was that a donation that the council wanted to make? Because I thought we had funding come in for that.
I can ask the question, if the funding came in through the town council and the payments are made out from the town council, whether it was grant funding or money that the town council had in the accounts, it would be presented on this list here. I believe that we do hold the money for the Christmas lunch and we do make payments for the Christmas lunch. I can feed that back to Jane, but also please do feel free to reach out to Jane yourself if you do have a specific query on that one. But I can only imagine that it's because we sort of, acting as a bank is the wrong expression, but although the community lunch is run by volunteers, we make the payments and hold the grant funding.
Councillor Onyedu.
Yes, I see that we're still connected with HSBC, even though we agreed we would move over. And I was wondering whether we had any clear timetable yet for closing our account with HSBC. I know it's going to take time setting up with the other accounts that we agreed on.
I believe, if I remember correctly, Councillor Ronnie-Dougal, the ethical banking subcommittee agreed that we would move over next financial year, so from April, at a time when the responsible finance officer deemed it wouldn't put any of our finances at risk. Rather than rush it all through, it's probably easier to retain the HSBC account, receive, for instance, next year's preset payment, which is coming in one lump rather than 2 payments, and then move over during the financial year. But it won't be drawn out into the financial year. It will probably, I imagine, be by the summertime.
Thank you very much.
Councillor Manning.
Item 2125, that's the white sentence fitted.
There are a number of light sensors we've had fitted. So we had one fitted at the public toilets in North Load car park. We have had them fitted in the toilets here in the community fridge, and that was because the responsible finance officer wanted to make sure that lights weren't being left on when places weren't being used. So we sort of spent a bit of capital up front to make ourselves more energy efficient and reduce our bills, because we were regularly finding that lights in public toilets were being left on for hours and hours and hours and no one was in there. So actually Magdalen Street and the car park toilets also received the sensors, so the lights come on when people are in the rooms but go off after a period of time when they don't detect motion, so that we're not wasting electricity with lights on all the time. I can't remember exactly where we asked for them to be fitted, because that was done by Jane and either Scarlett or one of the Sarahs, but I know there's a number of rooms, particularly the toilets in the town hall and also the public toilets, that we had them put in, and the area that the community fridge is in.
I wonder whether a member of our staff would be happy to sit in the closet area of the gents to make sure that if you're in there and the lights go off, the sensor can read you. I'm not necessarily speaking from experience.
One at a time, no, surely.
So, councillors, any other comments on the schedule of payment? I note 2089 is for the defib on the tour. Connor, is that it's currently functioning?
No, Your Worship, it's not currently functioning, and the bill to repair it goes into quite some number of £1,000s. So I believe that's just an accumulation of the standing charge for the electricity connection to that defibrillator. So yes, that's something that needs to be considered. when we have some money next financial year, what we want to do, whether we want to replace it or whether we want to disconnect it and not have a defib on at all.
So, councillors, I think this is a really important issue. This defib has been the subject of vandalisation from what I would say are people who need to think a lot more about what they're doing when they imagine that the defib is some sort of device for either counting who goes up the tour or some sort of signal transmitter. It is a defibrillator and it saves people's lives. So we probably need to do some work on promoting the fact that defib is there, what it is, and we probably need to make it look a little more like a defib, because at the moment it looks like a big black box. And I think that's part of the problem. But I think we do need to review this in the new financial year. Councillor, I have your agreement to sign off the schedule of payments. I will suffice.
Aye.
Thank you. While I do so, we will move on to consider and set the budget for the financial year 23-24. I will look to the chair of the Finance and General Purposes Committee to speak to this, as well as the clerk. Do I have the one to sign?
Isn't that not a copy signature? Oh. I believe Councillor McDougall had my copy because I provided her a set of papers. Have you got one in your right hand?
The one you just picked up.
Councillor McDougall, that one.
Yeah, thank you very much.
I've printed off 3 copies of the proposed budget. It was circulated with the summons and the agenda. There's only one change from what was agreed, and that was an increase to the allotments and land maintenance budget to allow for the Fisher's Hill standpipe. Does anyone wish to have a printed copy of the proposed budget? I have 3 up for grabs, in case people haven't got them in front of them or have had time to consider them. So as I say, it is as was agreed at Finance and General Purposes, but with that one amendment.
I think that you need that one as well.
Yeah, it's okay, I've got it. I've just got a question mark.
Yes, Councillor Andrew.
So last year we agreed to pay for the road closure for the Beltane procession, but I don't notice that in the budget for this year. Is that because I'm missing something, or it inadvertently got missed out, or it's included in something else?
So I believe, Councillor Ronnie Dougal, that is within the proposed budget for the Arts, Culture and Events Advisory Committee, which is the sum of £5,000. Now, whether
Arts, Culture and Events,
whether it is listed as that, or it might actually just be listed, because the main thing that advisory committee were looking at was going to be the coronation. It might just be listed as the coronation, but that's the budget for that advisory committee, and they are considering Beltane.
And that will include the Beltane.
On the 24th of January. There is also a separate budget for road closures already in here, so it might also...
There's 2 noted at the very top of the road closure, and I didn't notice it with those 2, so that's why I was questioning.
Right. No, it is within the budget. Just
not written down. Lovely, thank you.
Any other comments, councillors? Yes, councillor.
Donations. Does that mean the money we get from the car parking? Is that what it's talking about?
No, so we don't actually particularly get money from car parking. When events or groups use it, they use it as a fundraising mechanism. If we held an event where we opened it and we took money for the parking, it would be reflected in there, but we haven't as yet. I don't believe there are plans to. Glastonbury Abbey will be making donations next year for medieval fair and their open day, etc. It wasn't arranged in time for this year, but the £1,000 comes from Tour Fair, and then I believe the increase to next year's budget is taking into account the Abbey making donations. But no, we don't collect the money that is collected on car parking, because we've never done an event where we've organised it, and the town council's not allowed to use Herbie's Field as a revenue generator.
I get that because it's meant to be donations, but assuming a £5 donation for every one of the 300 cars it parks, over days we can use it for car parking, we could actually generate 42,000, which is a substantial amount of money. And I think perhaps, I mean, for these solstice events or something, which I guess if we're closing the road for it, we should maybe be thinking about using it for that.
Councillor, that's a very good point, and I think it's one that the new committee that will be looking at events needs to seriously consider. There have been events such as Beltane, which have attracted a lot of people to the town when Herbie's Field has remained closed. And we as a council could have maybe looked at how we staff that and perhaps raise funds to cover the cost of exactly. A very, very good point. Councillor Cook.
Yeah, additional to that, of course, the opportunity is the how successful the Stones have proved up at, with the parking up at the Tor, up and around there. And various other things, like the parking along Wells Road, now residents parking, that's working perfectly. I was talking to, both wardens, and their residents are very happy about it all. So parking is becoming restrictive.
Yes.
Very restrictive. I mean, God knows how many were up at around Tor. When in the old days when you could park up there and just jump out. There's still one van that is insistent that he's a bus and still parks. Whatever, as the warden said, he's been done once, so they'll just keep whatever. But yes, Herbie's Field is the obvious answer for these weekends, isn't it? Even bank holidays.
I agree with you, and I think that it's an area that the council needs to review. We do have a restricted covenant on the title deed, so we need to make sure that we're not falling foul of the law. But I think that it could certainly help with things like road closures, etc. I know that's not making a profit, that's just making sure that we don't lose any finance within the situation.
Yeah, and with that potential of 42,000, I mean, that's the maximum potential, and you've got to pay people, and et cetera, and give the donations out to the relatives, people who are doing all the work or whatever. But even so, even if you made £10,000, £15,000 a year out of it, it's going to go a long way to something else that we can fund.
Absolutely. Very, very good point. Thank you. Councillor Smythe?
Thank you, Your Worship. Yeah, financial assistance, public footpaths, bearing in mind the success of the Glastonbury Way and the attraction it is to many tourists and residents alike.
Which page are you on, Councillor? Oh, sorry, yep, I've had it.
And the somewhat reluctance to maintain our parish public footpaths by any other authorities, Mendip or county, it comes to my mind that we could be doing some of that ourselves, and therefore I'd like to suggest that at some point, if opportune, some money could be redirected into the public footpaths budget, which has remained at £150 only for over 10 years now. I'd like to see it raised to, at least 500, if not £1,000. So we have got the possibilities of repairing our own stiles and putting down gravel and such like, where our residents find it difficult to traverse these footpaths, especially to places such as the allotments. So that's a comment that I wish to be noted.
Thank you. I think that comment should be minuted, and I suspect that former Alderman Brunson will be applauding you from another place in mentioning this. It is, you're quite right, this budget has remained stationary for many, many years, and this council has relied upon the goodwill of the Conservation Society quite heavily as well. And that would be a finance and general purposes conversation, I imagine, Councillor. Are you proposing that we should actually increase this budget?
I would like to increase it. I am proposing to increase this budget to £1,000. And I would also like to suggest that we could approach the Conservation Society to match fund any repairs necessary to the Glastonbury Way and other footpaths.
Yes, Councillor.
Just to let you know that we do sell some of the maps for the Glastonbury Way and other items that pertain to the Glastonbury Way. And the idea is that that money goes towards maintaining things like the boards. It's not a great deal at the moment, but it would be at least some gesture towards keeping and maintaining that particular route. So we do sell that actually in the centre for that specific purpose. It's not for our own property, it is for the Glastonbury Way. So it's things like maps, coasters, way markers. That's all at the moment.
You got right to reply?
Right to reply. Yeah, that's very good news. And therefore, could I ask for an account, the budget of the accounts, a copy of the accounts, in order to be aware of how much we are receiving for that purpose, because I can put 2 or 3 hats on here and make sure it's steered towards the right direction.
Yeah, that's not a problem. We can do that easily. I'll get I think it's Mary Parker who actually accounts for the money, so I'll get Mary to give you some idea of where we are so far with it. Because she actually holds the money and then actually gives us our bits of money. And the bits of money that should come to you will be from the Glastonbury Way.
Thank you. Yes, Councillor.
I'd still like to propose that we raise the budget to £1,000 paths, because there are other paths that need repairing as well as the Glastonbury Way, of course.
Before we do, I'd just like to check with the town clerk, because that's obviously, if we did increase, that would impact on the figures that we do have now for the precept.
Yes, Your Worship. I've got the spreadsheet up on the board, so we can change figures and see what the impact would then be at year end next financial year on the summary page. So if it goes through, I can change that figure there. And
well, councillors, would it be prudent to look at how it impacts before we make a vote? So Connor, if you'd be happy to do that.
So obviously it's a little bit premature, Your Worship, because you're considering the budget and then you decide what precept you're going to make. But obviously, depending on what precept you make, will have the impact on the summary page. So
I'm always convinced it was the chicken.
So I've loaded it with what my recommendation in the following report will be, but obviously it's up to council to actually set next year's precept. So in terms that cell with 171 is green, because then the balance at the end of next financial year is at least a quarter of the precept. So changing that budget line by £850 doesn't materially impact the.
It doesn't.
No.
So, councillors, we have a proposal. Do we have a seconder for this proposal?
Oh yeah, we're queuing.
Councillor White. Would anybody wish to speak against this proposal? Then I'll move to vote. All those in favour?
I have that as a majority, Your Worship.
Anyone against? Any abstentions? One abstention, I believe. Any other points on these budgets before we move on? So now we've considered the budget, we move on to item 10 to consider and set the precept demand for the financial year 23-24. And there is a paper that has been circulated with a number of options. I must say that on being on this council for over 10 years, this is the first time we've ever received such a report, and I think we're probably going to be the most informed council that's ever made a precept decision for Glastonbury. Connor, do you wish to speak to this before we debate it?
Only to say, Your Worship, that my recommendation was contained within the report. It's been considered a number of times by Finance and General Purposes, both formally and in sessions where councillors discussed what they would like to be able to achieve next financial year and in future financial years. These figures reflect the increased tax base, so this is the first time you've formally seen the increased tax base because it came in later than it was promised to us. However, that was reflected in the report that I sent round. So my recommendation is that this Town Council makes a precept demand for the figure of £650,924, which represents a £200 Band D precept bill. And that's in the context of, oops, I don't want to go into screensaver. That's in the context of the precept comparison that, again, you've seen a number of times, that although this Town Council's budget would increase by 55% to reflect the fact that this year's budget was forecast to dip into reserves, we have to replenish them next year and also account for both increasing costs and projects to decrease our costs and increase our income, that because the tax base has increased, our budget can increase by 55%, but the tax bill for residents increases, it's still a large percentage, by 50%. There's a 5% differential in our budget and the increase for households. So that would still make us the second lowest precepting large parish in what is currently the Mendip district. So that's my recommendation, but it's for this council to decide what you'd like to set the exact precept figure to be. But you've agreed the previous budget, so it obviously can't be less than that.
Thank you. I look to the Chair of Finance and General Purposes. This recommendation from the clerk, I believe, falls within the decision of the Finance and General Purposes Committee. Is that right, Deputy Mayor?
Yes.
Yeah, thank you. So Finance and General Purposes debated this quite a bit. It's been quite a difficult debate for us all. I wonder if, I don't wish to repeat the Finance and General Purposes meeting debate in tonight's meeting, but I do wish to hear Councillor's thoughts about this because not everybody was present at those meetings. So I see Councillor Price, then Councillor Okamandu.
Yeah, we have discussed this at length over several meetings, and it was a really difficult decision to come to because of the current cost of living crisis and the impact that we know it will have on families and individuals that are struggling. But it makes financial sense, it's unavoidable. We did say that we would provide information to all households so that people fully understand how the decision was made and what help and support is available for people to manage their. I'm just wondering at what point that will happen.
Thank you. I think I will look to the clerk for the answer to that. Connor.
Thank you. Well, that leaflet with the accompanying sort of explanation and further information obviously couldn't be drafted until you guys had set how much you wanted to, what your precept demand was going to be. So after tonight's meeting, when the Town Council knows what it's going to be asking of the residents next financial year, then I will start drafting a leaflet and I will bring it to February's full council I'll provide it beforehand for comments, and then hopefully at February's meeting you can agree it, and then at that point we can look to have it printed and distributed to each household in the town.
Thank you. Councillor Okamandu.
Yeah, I'm the Deputy Chair of Finance and General Purposes, and my memory of that meeting is when we were discussing it, we didn't know what the tax base would be, so we were kind of assuming that the precept demand would be equivalent to the precept increase for individual households. And we agreed to put it up at 52%, being a kind of classic compromise between 50 and 55, with Steve Henderson, I think, who's not here to confirm it, proposing kind of compromise of 52%. So if we went with Connor's recommendation, it would be slightly less than that, 50 rather than 52%.
Thank you. Any other thoughts on the document before us and the recommendations of the clerk? Councillor White.
Just one observation. I quite agree about what happened in the finance and general purposes, the 52%. But I just notice here, option 5, I'm not saying we do option 5, but that was 52% because the increased tax base gives us, or gives households 5% reduction. But what I noticed was, if you look at the increased weekly payment between option 4 and option 5, so option 4 is 385 a week extra, option 5 is 390, so another 5 pence, but it puts an additional 9,000 almost into the coffer. So just a thought.
Thank you, Councillor. So, councillors, we are duty bound to set a precept. We have the recommendation of the town clerk. Any other observations before I request a proposal from you? I would say, being on this council for over 10 years, we have always had a very low precept. Part of that is because we have commercial activity going on which other councils don't benefit from. And partly because we didn't do a lot. And it's increased with the amount of things that this council's done. By and large, I think that our community has been supportive of the things that the council has done, and that the various things that we've brought into place over the last, well, certainly 11 or 12 years, has been a considerable change. However, we never have had to increase it by such a margin before. What I'm conscious of is the 50% of £1. It's not a huge increase, and the real difference is between the amount of money that is currently being paid, which is going to be around about the £250 a week, to the amount of money that will be paid, which is going to be around, well, if we went for the clerk's recommendation, £385. From the overall council tax, it's not actually a very big percentage of the overall council tax. It just sounds quite alarming if we frame it as a percentage. That's why it's really important that we explain to the community what that means. And I'm fairly certain that the community will understand. We are impacted by COVID, and we've been impacted by the raising of prices, etc., just like every other business and organisation. And I think it's quite right, as councillors tonight have pointed out, that we have to try and maximise every opportunity we can to bring in more money for our other operations rather than the precept. And I think that we're looking at doing that. I know Councillor Cook is leading a subcommittee now that will be looking at how perhaps the town hall can increase its revenues. And so that's something we will consider, and it may be that we don't have to do, I will come to you, Councillor Ronnie-Dougal, in a moment, if that's all right. We don't have to ever make such a big increase again, and maybe over the next few years we might even see an opportunity to do something remarkable. But this is a crunch tonight. Councillor Ronnie-Dougal.
Yes, I'm slightly confused because we've had the two finance and general purposes meetings where we discussed the precept, and we agreed on option 1 at the last finance and general purposes meeting. So I'm slightly confused why we still have a recommendation for option 4 when we have already in the Finance and General Purposes Committee agreed option 1. And maybe somebody could clarify that for me.
I will ask the clerk.
The reason Councillor Roney Dougal this report's been written and there's a recommendation is because Finance and General Purposes never got to consider the change in the tax base. And the change in the tax base presents the Town Council an opportunity to not only increase its budget, but actually to reduce from what had previously been agreed the burden on households. So Finance and General Purposes previously agreed a 52% increase to the budget and therefore a 52% increase to households because we didn't have the updated tax base. But because the tax base, the number of council tax paying households has increased, therefore the burden on households has reduced. So that presents this Town Council an opportunity to increase its budget by 55% to give you a larger reserve predicted at the end of next financial year, which makes us a more resilient organisation, but to reduce the impact on households from a 52% increase to a 50% increase. If, however, as a Town Council, you wish to say Finance and General Purposes agreed, let me show you the one that you've already...
Option 1.
You've agreed option one, but because the tax base has changed, option 1 doesn't work out anymore. It would actually be option 5. So Finance and General Purposes has actually agreed a 52% increase to households, but that presents a 57% increase to our budget. So because the tax base has changed, it's changed all the numbers, which is why it's
understanding. So in terms of the numbers of the money coming in and the money being spent per household, that was option 5, whereas you've got it as option 1 was what we agreed because you were doing that on the percentages rather than the actual numbers. Now I understand. Okay.
So, Councillor, the councillors, the key is the weekly payment. What Finance and General Purposes agreed was a weekly payment of £3.90.
Yes.
If we continue that, hence Michael White's suggestion that we consider to option 5, which is the same, £3.90.
Yes.
But it generates a lot more income for us. What the clerk is suggesting is that we go slightly lower with 385. Yeah, that's right. And so this is a problem with precept. It's not an exact science. You can't do anything until you know what the base is. The basis can come out a little late. Yeah. We have to weigh up the impact really of pennies on the community and the impact on our operation. Yes, Councillor. Oh, sorry. Oh. It's a conundrum to, it took me years to understand what was going on when we set the precept, but I think I've got a grasp of it now. Councillor.
So therefore, as option 4 is in line with what we agreed in terms of the money that people are spending at the Finance and General Purposes, and that's what we agreed, then I would like to propose that we accept the Town Clerk's recommendation.
Sorry, just before we get a seconder for that, Your Worship, just so we're 100% clear, my recommendation is actually a slight decrease for households in option 4. So I'm actually recommending a round £200 band D, £385 a week. However, Finance and General Purposes agreed £202.59p, £3.90.
I've understood that, and that's why I said I'm going with your recommendation because I fully understood what was being said.
So, Council, we have a proposal to accept the recommendation of the clerk. Does anybody wish to second the proposal, or would anybody like to make an alternative proposal?
Just for clarity, Your Worship, I have actually put the wording of my recommendation up on the board if anyone wants to check before they second it.
Conor, as it's such a prestigious moment, would you mind just reading through your recommendation for us, please?
Of course, Your Worship. It is recommended that members accept option 4 and set the precept at £650,924, for 2023-24. Option 4 represents an income of £650,924 and a Band D precept of £200, a 50% increase in financial terms to households, but an increase of 55% to the Town Council budget owing to the increased tax base. The financial burden on households is less than was previously agreed without the updated tax base figures for Glastonbury. However, as the overall income is increased because of the tax base, it offers an opportunity for the Town Council to become more financially resilient than previously forecast, with a lesser burden on residents. Glastonbury Town Council is projected to have the second lowest precept of a large parish, Frome, Glastonbury, Shepton Mallet, Street and Wells, in Mendip for 2023-24.
Thank you, Councillor. So we have a proposer and a seconder. Before I move to vote, would anyone wish to speak against the proposal? Move to vote. All those in favour?
I have that as a majority, Your Worship.
Thank you. All those against? All those abstaining? 2 abstentions.
2 abstentions. Thank you, Your Worship.
Councillors, it's imperative that we absolutely follow the advice of Councillor Price and make sure that we explain to our residents not only the reasons why, but the help and support available, which is in its own essential. And we know that the help and support available is going to be better than it's ever been for our residents, because they will be able to get 100% council tax rebate if they are from the poorest households. So, councillors, that was an extremely difficult thing.
Sorry, Your Worship, can I ask before you move on, because the council has now accepted the budget and has set the precept, could I ask for a formal resolution regarding the Public Works Loan Board for the works in the car park to the value of £100,000 that was in the budget, just so that if I have to demonstrate a formal resolution for that specific item when making the application, I have one, although by agreeing the budget, and it was clear in the budget, you have accepted it.
Thank you. I would like to propose a formal resolution for the Public Works Loan Board application for the works in the car park. Is there a seconder?
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Councillor Ogden.
Thank you.
Anybody wish to speak against the proposal? Move to vote. All those in favour?
I have that as a majority, Your Worship.
All those against? Any abstentions? We have 1 abstention.
1 abstention, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Connor, for bringing that up. Very, very useful. Are you comfortable for me to move on to the next item?
Thank you, Your Worship.
Your Worship, can I just thank the clerk for the work that he's put in to outline so clearly all those different options for us, because that was a lot of work.
I think we should move a vote of thanks for the clerk. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Thank you very much, Connor. It's the first time this council has ever had a report like this when deciding how to set the precept. So we move on to item 11, to consider setting a date for an extraordinary meeting on the subject of highway works. This relates to the offer of Councillor Cottle as a Somerset councillor and Councillor Hart to meet with us to discuss the various road traffic regulations that we'd like to see imposed on the town. Connor, do you have any dates in mind?
Your Worship, I'm just getting calendar. Okay. I remember it was a request of Councillor Cottle that we met in January. So in order that we have 3 clear days notice, we're probably looking at the very earliest. There is Thursday the 19th is a potential, or the following week. There is no meeting for Monday the 23rd of January or Wednesday the 25th of January.
I think
It's come through for Monday the 23rd. I can't remember.
World Heritage meeting.
World
Heritage site, that was it, Monday 23rd.
yes, the officer from Bath can that went out to take on. I'm sorry you haven't seen that.
Oh, that's all right. Wednesday the 25th is free, Your Worship.
Yeah. Project
Is that for 2 p.m. or did they go for 6 p.m? 2 p.m. Well, we could still meet. Council could meet later in the evening. That's an option.
Sorry, I can't.
At 2 in the afternoon.
No, that's another meeting, Councillor Osborne. Sorry. There's a number of things I don't seem to have in my diary.
Right. So councillors, could I have a show of hands of all those who could attend? I think the first date suggested was the 19th, Thursday the 19th. A show of hands of all of those who could attend a meeting on Thursday the 19th at 7 o'clock in.
That's at 7, yeah?
At 7?
Yeah.
So I think I'm looking, we can all do that. May I suggest, as time is imperative in this, that we set the date then? Right. Have you received any times and dates from Councillor Cottle?
I haven't, Your Worship, no.
So I also think that we need to look at, was it Wednesday 25th? Could I have a show of hands of all those who are free on Wednesday 25th?
January.
Yeah.
At 7 o'clock? Elby? So it looks like most of us could attend that. So we put that down as a second option, I think. And then hopefully one or other we can attend. Connor, would you be happy to, if Councillor Cottle's not free on either of those dates, to circulate perhaps through something, one of those platforms where you can choose a date or whatever?
Yep,
Thank
I will,
you.
Your Worship, thank you.
So, thank you very much, councillors. We now move to note the resolutions from the delegated committees. Am I correct? It's only resilience that met?
Yes, Your Worship. Resilience met the day before our last full town council meeting, so their resolution wasn't tabled for the last meeting, but there have been no meetings since the last full town council meeting to today.
You. Okay, so Councillor White, as chair of Resilience, do you wish to speak to any of this information?
Only briefly that Melissa, our climate and resilience officer, is investigating various things, so as it says in here. So one of the ideas was to have, can we put solar panels on the downhall roof and Dunstan's house and all the rest of it? And then we realised from one of the earlier discussions that we didn't have any insulation in the main hall, and so, and so the other easy option to fix down there would be secondary glazing, because those window sills are wide, so it would be a simple job. And then door closers, because we were fed up with heating the Abbey grounds, should we say.
Yes. Thank you very much. So, councillors, we note the resolutions from the committee. I will suffice.
Right.
So, we now move on to receive updates from advisory committees and consider recommendations from these. I am unsure whether any committees have met. Yes, Councillor Andrew.
So the committee hasn't met, but Connor said for me to mention about the thermal imaging camera, which we received from Avalon Community Energy just before Christmas. And Susanna Clements had it and unfortunately was ill, so only managed to get to one household She then passed it on to me on the 27th of December, and I have visited 10 houses. It's been absolutely fascinating. I have learnt so much. And 2 people have mentioned that the fact of me going around their house, seeing all the places, talking about them, giving them all the information about thermal paint and all the rest of it, and that they would pass this information on to other people. So I reckon for every house I've seen, maybe 5 households are going to benefit from it. I think it's been a real success. It's gone back to Susanna now, and I noticed in one of the things that Connor would like Melissa to have it at a certain point to be able to do the town hall. And so we will certainly work with her to do that. But having told you about it last time, I thought that you might like an update on it. And the great success of it. It feels as though it's been a really positive thing.
Thank you so much. So, councillors, we now move on to receive county council reports, and now we move on to receive the district council's reports. The meeting of Mendip District Council this month was cancelled, and I personally didn't attend any other meetings, so it's been an extremely quiet month with Mendip. Lindsay, is there?
Yes, likewise. Can I just take this opportunity to talk about Glastonbury Community Development Trust? Because that has now doing a trial to offer a couple of laptops in the Talking Cafe, just to see what the demand is and what sort of things people want. And the queries so far have been about housing, use of mobile phones, so tech queries, and there was a comment that people couldn't get through to the CAB, Citizens Advice, which is now only an 0800 number. So presumably we're going to get some more comments about Citizens Advice, so that will be interesting to see how well our money is being spent.
Yes, thank you. Any questions for the district councillors? We now move on to receive verbal updates from representatives of outside bodies. Yes, Councillor.
Well, I have a question about St Edmund's Hall, because I know that there was a problem with regard to doing the accounts and everything, and I was wondering where we'd got to, Lochkavandu, with that.
Yeah, I'm the treasurer, I think, of St Edmund's Hall, which is an independent charity, but administered from here. A woman called Kitty, who lives up there, is doing the accounts. It's almost done. There's a little hiccup because there's a note in the accounts regarding a deposit account and interest received, but nobody has any knowledge of an actual deposit account. That's resolved. Kitty can't really sign off on it. I very much doubt if we do have a deposit account that nobody knows about, but there is some interest that's been received. Apart from that, it's all ready.
Thank you. We now move on to Mayor's announcements. Well, the Holy Thorn cutting was tremendous, I must say. Thank you to all councillors who turned up. And the other big thing that I'm not sure if the Holy Thorn happened before our last meeting or not, but the Christmas lunch is something I just want to say a huge thank you to all the members of the community, all councillors who came along on the day and gave up Christmas Day, and all those who'd been involved in the organising of it. It was an absolutely wonderful event. I've been involved in them since the council took them on, which I believe was in 2015, but it might have been 2016. My memory doesn't serve me well. But I've been involved in all of them, I think, and if 19 was the last one. And this was the best one ever. And it was really quite remarkable from the fact that we only had 5 weeks to organise it. So I would particularly like to make sure that the minutes reflect this council's thanks to all those people who really did a tremendous job. Thank you very much. Yes,
Can we give a special thank you as well to the caretakers, just because of the clearing up afterwards was, spotless and without mention.
Councillor White?
Thank you. Yeah, there's just been a continual stream of people stopping and saying, what a wonderful event. So Alistair, the chef, was by the market today, and he just said it was a real pleasure to do it. All of those happy, smiling faces. And yeah, so a lot of people have said, thank you, well done to everybody. And it really was. A time of joy or joyousness was the overall
it certainly was.
feeling. Thank you.
Thank you, Zoe.
Just wanted to say that we had an absolute army of volunteers, people who gave their time, but we also had a lot of people that donated equipment for the day, helped out with services, presents were donated. So it was just a fantastic inpouring from the whole community. Even people that couldn't be there on the day were contributing to it, and it was fab. And maybe next year we'll start planning a little bit earlier.
Absolutely, yes. And I thought it was tremendous. I think you produced the list of all the people who donated stuff, Paul. Absolutely wonderful, wasn't it? Yeah.
Donor as well, who provided funding for the event.
Certainly Glastonbury at its best. So, Connor, if you could minute these thanks to everyone mentioned. So I am now will have very few, from, if this is like any other years, very few events that will take place over the next few months until the end. So it was that Christmas lunch that's such a highlight. Absolutely. So thank you. So we now move on to communications and announcements.
Your Worship, so I think it's already been mentioned, but could I just announce that works to install the new basketball and netball practice court in Abbey Park commenced yesterday?
Yes, Councillor.
And can I just ask that the local residents have been written to and offered use of the car park?
They have been. Actually, what we found was that residents have parking spaces, and actually those who park along there tended to be people who visit the park. But yes, the offer of using the car park if anyone was displaced was made, but we haven't had anyone take up that offer.
Thank you. Yes, Councillor Smythe.
Just a technical note on that particular note. Can we ensure that the basketball nets are at the regulation 10-foot height? Because it's really frustrating for young kids practicing when the height's variable. So 10 foot.
Sounds like a very good idea. Thank you very much. Thank you, Connor. Any other announcements? Correspondence?
Can I just raise your worship that we have had correspondence from Inspector Reid of Avon and Somerset Police? If I can read it out for everyone, because it's not been circulated. The current PCSO supervisor, Hannah Hyde, has been successful in an application to move to HQ for a secondment for 12 months. Therefore, Inspector Reid is running a recruitment process to fill the resultant vacancy. Current PCSOs with a minimum of 24 months service will be eligible to apply. Inspector Reid plans to run the interviews on Monday the 16th of January at Express Park Police Centre in Bridgewater between the hours of 0800 and 1600. The role is fundamentally important to the delivery of neighbourhood policing services in Street Glastonbury and Wells, and for the purposes of transparency, stakeholder confidence and public confidence, Inspector Reid wondered if a member of the Town Council would be interested in sitting on the interview panel. Inspector Reid has suggested perhaps yourself, Your Worship, or the Deputy Mayor, or any other appropriate member, if neither. This is to ensure that the process. To ensure that the process aligns with the police's recruitment processes. The inspector will draft the questions. However, whoever represents the Town Council will ask the questions between the inspector and any other parish that he's invited. He hasn't made that explicitly aware to me. He will also be joined by another neighbourhood inspector and hopefully a representative from Unison. So perhaps we are the parish who's been invited. It will be on a voluntary basis. He says he's afraid, but he will buy lunch and refreshments, and also is happy to provide transport to a member as he'll be driving through Glastonbury to get there anyway. So that's an offer open from the policing inspector.
I would love to, but we have the Christmas lunch debrief on that day at 2 o'clock.
I'm afraid I unfortunately have to work for a living, and I will. That's right in the middle of that. So, who are the councillors who are meeting with the police currently?
The police liaison group, Your Worship, I believe, is councillors White, Manning, Cook, and Osborne, I believe.
Of interviewing in the past. So.
Well, if there's nobody else who should do it, I think that your experience would be valuable. Thank you very much. So, Conor, will you make sure that that's all sorted out?
I will, Your Worship. Thank you, and thank you very much for volunteering, Councillor Osborne.
Thank you. Any other correspondence?
None from me, Your Worship.
Yes, Councillor.
All right, this is not correspondence, I'm afraid. It's the one before. About the Abbey Park, if that's at all possible.
Yes, yeah.
It's quite important, yeah. I brought my dog up there a lot, so I see it a lot, you know, in different conditions, you know, leaves and no leaves. And it was when it was covered in leaves that I first noticed it and walking across it. And it's a manhole cover by the toilets as you're walking to the right towards the end of it with the toilet block on the right-hand side, right? So it's just there. And it seems to be, the frame seems to be loose.
Right.
So there is, I mean, it's a potential very dangerous trip hazard.
Yeah.
And as I say, especially when it's getting covered with leaves and what have you. So I've been meaning to bring this up. I meant to bring it up in the last meeting, but sorry, I forgot. But I thought I'd better do it now.
No, it's a very good point. Conor, would that be a Mendip District Council issue?
It would be, Your Worship, yes, because it's Mendip District Council who, they don't own the land, but they operate it as such. I can certainly pass that feedback on to the contractors at ID Verdi.
Thank you very much. I think that would be very useful. Thank you. So, news releases, councillors.
May I, Your Worship? Obviously, there will be a lot of time and work put into the precept leaflet. Can I suggest that that's the news release, that's not a news release as such, that's worked on as an outcome of this meeting?
Yes, I think that's a very good idea. Councillors, are we in agreement to that? Thank you. Actions arising from the meeting.
Thank you, Your Worship. So I've noted an action to pass on the comment from Councillor Osborne to the Planning Department. However, with Julie Reader-Sullivan, the Head of Service here, that's probably going back anyway, but I shall do it too. I will raise the queries regarding crime reporting with the police. I will pass on Councillor Ronnie Dougal your query to the Responsible Finance Officer. I will ask the projects officer to start looking into the TOR defib. I will be bringing the precept explanation leaflet to the February meeting. I will be arranging the extraordinary full town council meeting regarding highways matters in conjunction with councillors Cottle and Hart. I will make Inspector Reid aware that Councillor Osborne has kindly volunteered to take part in the interviews and put those two people in touch, and I'll pass on the comment about the loose manhole cover in Abbey Park to ID Verdi.
Yes, Councillor.
I'm not sure whether this is the right time to ask. I was just wondering if we'll get any feedback on the warm space and how many people use it at all.
Nobody tonight, because they went downstairs.
Just to say, actually, we started it earlier today whilst the market was on, and there were a couple of people that did come in. But I don't think it's been put out there very much, and I think we're going to have to advertise it a lot more.
So I was just thinking about press releases and whether that, I think it's on our town council website, isn't it?
Yeah, so I've shared it via the Town Council website, social media, the Somerset Community Foundation, and I've also put it on the National Directory of Warm Spaces. So I will consider to share it, and I'll look to send something out to our press contacts.
Yes, Councillor.
So what about our nice little notice board down there? You could put-
Yes, so I've produced something to get printed out onto them. Yes, thank you.
I would also urge councillors, if you use social media, particularly Twitter and Facebook, please do share it. It was released yesterday, wasn't it, Conor, or today? Anyway, we
Yesterday,
need to we do need to keep it current. So thank you for the actions. To note the date of the next meeting, unlucky for some lovers in the community.
Always use the Welsh one in January.
Well, Yakova. So, councillors, I now declare the meeting closed.
Awesome.
The one that was out of print.
Yeah.
The Christmas lunch wash-up thing.
Yeah.